Paddy Pimblett is one of the brightest rising stars in the UFC. The 27-year-old Brit shot to stardom after his electrifying UFC debut in 2021, where he won by KO in the first round against Luigi Vendramini. Since then, the young fighter's funny hairstyle, thick Liverpool accent, trash talk, and showboating have made him a UFC star across the globe. But there's only one problem. Paddy hasn't fought any well-known, top-ranked fighters, and his recent controversial win against Jared Gordon has brought many fighters and fans alike to question. Is Paddy the baddie a legit fighter, or is he simply a big name that the UFC is trying to milk? So from questionable victories to extreme diets that could jeopardize his career, this is why Paddy Pimblett is the worst thing to happen to the UFC. When Paddy entered the UFC in 2021, he did so as a former Cage Warriors featherweight champion. With a reasonably impressive record of 16 wins and 3 losses, the young fighter seemed to have good prospects in the UFC. After putting on a great display where he did receive some damage, Paddy managed to walk away from his UFC debut with a first-round KO. That's all any newcomer can hope for in their first fight. The fighter has gone on to win his next 3 fights in the UFC since then, leaving him with a record of 4 wins and 0 losses in the UFC. However, despite these wins, some have argued that Paddy is not taking his fighting career seriously, for multiple reasons. The first reason is Paddy has shown little improvement in his fighting style since he joined the UFC. UFC veteran Matt Brown, who fights in the welterweight division, is one of the many who have been critical of Paddy's skill set. Brown says he almost has to go back to the drawing board and start from scratch. On an episode of MMA Fighting's The Writer vs. the Fighter, he added that many things in his game are so far behind. These harsh words came after Paddy's controversial decision win over Jared Gordon at UFC 282. Many fighters and fans disagreed with the judge's decision. Nate Diaz weighed in on Twitter writing, "Bruh, you lost that fight." Former champion and commentator Michael Bisping branded the judge's ruling as wrong. Even UFC commentator and popular podcast host Joe Rogan couldn't believe Paddy was announced the winner. During the post-fight interview, Joe described the fight as close. Paddy was quick to correct Joe, saying, "It wasn't close. It wasn't close." This perceived arrogance from Paddy has left a bad taste in the mouths of many fans. Many believe he lost and that the fight wasn't close at all, and Paddy seems unable to admit that. Paddy doubled down on his position in the post-fight interviews, saying that anyone who disagreed with the decision could suck his asshole. Man, oh man. Not the humble response fans wanted to hear from the fighter after such a narrow and disputed victory. Matt Brown, who we mentioned previously, made some bold claims with regard to Paddy's commitment to fighting, saying, "He's a professional social media guy. His hobby is fighting." And Brown might be right. Did you know that after his debut, Paddy signed a 7-figure deal with the media company Barstool Sports? They described his role as a brand ambassador and content creator. If Paddy is making more money filming YouTube videos for Barstool than he is fighting in the UFC, is it a stretch to believe that his heart might not be all the way in the fighting game? The fighter has also turned heads with his crazy weight gain after his fights, famously saying he'd rather be fat and happy than have a six-pack. Paddy balloons to more than 200 pounds after his bouts. That's more than 50 pounds over the lightweight limit at which he fights. And cutting weight for fights may have negatively impacted the fighter's relationship with food, as he's previously hinted at having an eating disorder. And it's easy to see why he might think that. Paddy can consume up to 10,000 calories a day when he's not in preparation for a fight. His drastically altered appearance is fueled by binging on Chinese food, Italian food, burgers and fries, and desserts, claiming he can eat 4 at a time. So the guy clearly likes to eat. Why is that problematic? Well, maintaining weight and peak physical condition is extremely important for an athlete, especially a fighter. Paddy's extreme weight fluctuations may end up jeopardizing his career. Another indicator that he's not taking fighting as seriously as he should. Even the head of the UFC, Dana White, has addressed Paddy's weight gain, saying, "It's very bad and doesn't prolong your career." Dana has also mentioned that Pimblett's weight gain limits the fights they can give him. The UFC can't offer him short-notice fights since they know he won't be able to make weight. Fellow fighters such as featherweight champion Alex Volkanovski have offered words of warning to the fighter, urging him to consider the long-term effects of such weight fluctuations on not only his career, but his health as well. Clearly, eating too much food can be dangerous for your career as an athlete, and eating your own words can also be fatal, as fans have seen how many times the cocky trash talker ends up KO'd in the cage. So Paddy better watch out, since his trash talk and brash mouth have played a major part in securing his place on the world stage. In the post-fight interview of his UFC debut, Paddy explains to Michael Bisping, "I'm a Scouser, we don't get knocked out." Michael had to remind him that he very nearly did get KO'd during that one-round fight. But nevertheless, the Liverpool native was high on his win. Some fans were quick to notice his short-term memory and arrogant behavior. Paddy also famously said, before his fight with Jordan Levitt at UFC 208 in London, that he would teabag his opponent when he won. The fighter did win the bout via rear naked choke, but when he gloatingly fulfilled his promise, some fans were unimpressed by his lack of respect for his opponent. Many of you have probably been wondering, with only 4 fights in the UFC, why is Paddy so famous? Well, it's a combination of the trash talk and showboating we've just mentioned, along with his unique appearance and his thick accent has made him memorable to UFC fans across the globe. But another factor may be at play here. The UK hasn't been home to many UFC champions. And while MMA may not be the biggest sport in the country compared to football or rugby, Paddy and fighters like him garner the support of the cities they come from. So fans have helped generate buzz around Paddy's name. Maybe not die-hard UFC fans, but die-hard Paddy fans specifically. This is great for Pimblett, but it also means that his popularity is not directly linked to his resume and performance as a fighter. As far as fighters go, so far Paddy has had a decent run in the UFC. He has yet to face any top contenders in his division, and his last controversial win against Jared Gordon has clearly called his skills into question. From both fans and fighters alike, it's also clear that fans don't like his arrogant side. The fighter's extreme weight fluctuations have raised eyebrows and made people wonder how seriously he takes his fighting career, while his trash talking and boasting have turned some fans against him. Some have suggested that his fame is unrelated to his skill, and more to his flashy persona, but only time will tell. So from weird haircuts and wacky diets, to disputed wins and brash talk, that's why Paddy Pimblett is the worst thing to happen to the UFC.